very happy to introduce...
Hi, Craig. Hi, Emma.
Hi, Robbie.
Very happy to introduce all of our Mcilvanney shortlisted authors that we've got here with us tonight. Normally, when we do these events, and Emma will know because we've had her on before, we start off with an introduction to yourself and your books. So if we start off with Emma at the top, yep. She's next to me.
Okay, no worries. So I'm Emma Christie, and if you hadn't noticed the big sign behind me, this is my debut novel, The Silent Daughter, and it is the story of a news reporter called Chris Morrison, who is based in Edinburgh, and the story follows him as he searches for his missing daughter Ruth, and it looks at how the digital world and social media can be used and how far you can push it when you're not wanting to be found.
Nice.
Cool.
Craig, do you want to go next?
Yes. I'm trying to remember exactly how many books I've written. I think this is my 15th or 16th book. That's the US, and this is the UK cover. Hyde. It's set in Victorian Edinburgh in the 19th century, and at its root, basically it's a murder mystery, underpins everything. But the character of Hyde is a friend of an acquaintance of Robert Louis Stevenson, and the subtext is that he is the person who inspired ultimately Stevenson to write Jekyll and Hyde. It's as I say, it's a murder mystery set against a background of Celtic mythology, and the duality. It's all about dualities of identities, specifically the Scottish dual identity at the time, at the height of the British Empire.
Nice. And Robbie, do you want to introduce yourself? Can Robbie hear us?
Hi, sorry, I didn't actually...
Oh, that's not going well. We've got some hellos. Sam has said congratulations to you all. It's fantastic news that you're shortlisted. How did it feel when you got the message to say you were shortlisted for the prize? Because there were some real names on the long list this year.
Well, and you go.
No, after you, Emma.
Yeah, no, I was in the midst of edits for my second book, and at the same time I was on holiday in Mallorca, so I was in a really lovely place with my head in a totally different book when I got a phone call to say that I'd made the shortlist, and I was just absolutely astounded, to be honest, and delighted. I mean, I was absolutely chuffed to bits to get onto the long list, and so to know that, you know, Denise Mina and Val McDermott and Chris Brookmeyer were all on that list, and that mine had been chosen was just absolutely, totally chuffed, I would say. Absolutely brilliant news.
Craig?
Well, it was fantastic. I've been on the short list a few times before, a couple of times before, and on the long list, and I won it in 2015. So it's just fantastic to be nominated again. You know, it's this faith in your work, if you like, that people seem to respond positively to what I'm doing, which is very, very good, because I really don't have a clue what I'm doing half the time. So how I got there, I don't know, but great. But can I just also say it's great that Emma and Robbie are you're both on the debut as well. I mean, to be nominated for 2 categories is absolutely fantastic. So congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
Robbie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, thanks, Craig. Yeah, I will try. I'm not trying to be some international man of mystery or anything. I think I'm having problems with the internet, so if I keep disappearing, I apologise. But I'm Robbie Morrison, the author of 1930s Glasgow thriller Edge of the Grave, which is conveniently out in paperback this week. As I said, it's a 1930s Glasgow thriller that focuses on, in the lead character is Inspector Jimmy Dreghorn, and it involves it follows him as he fights corruption, prejudice, toffs, and razor gangs in the hunt for a brutal serial killer. It's I've always and to join in with everybody else. Yeah, I'm absolutely delighted to have been nominated for both the debut prize and the Mcilvanney prize, which sort of knocked my socks off when I heard about it. Partly that, I'm especially delighted to be nominated for the Mcilvanney prize because Edge of the Grave, the title comes from a quote from one of William Mcilvanney's novels, The Papers of Tony Veitch, which is, it was as if Glasgow couldn't shut the wryness of its mouth even at the edge of the grave. So I'm going to make that my plan from now on, is always to start every book with a quote from a very famous writer so that I can guarantee there's one good sentence in there at least.
Excellent. Sam has asked if you get shortlist and long list feedback from the judges about why they chose your books. Do you want to start us off again, Emma?
I wouldn't really say we got feedback. I mean, I think if there are comments from the judges on which were released as part of the press release. I think of mine, they said it was taking the domestic noir genre and offering something fresh and different, which I'm really pleased with that summing up actually. And I wasn't ever sure quite how to define my writing, but I'm quite happy with domestic noir. I'll take it, and especially if I'm offering something new to the genre, then I'm more than happy to take that.
Craig?
Yeah, I think it's nice to get some feedback. It seems to differ from year to year. Sometimes they will give a statement about the winning book, but that hasn't always been the case. But it was nice to get the little piece of feedback that their qualification for having put the book on the shortlist, which is always nice to hear.
Robbie?
I'm ashamed to admit I can't actually remember what the judges in the Mcilvanney site said about the book. So I'll just go with my favourite quote from it, which is Robbie Morrison really is a breath of fresh creative air in crime fiction. Edge of the Grave is a stunning debut. Razor-sharp prose and a superbly crafted sense of time and place. A great Glaswegian page-turner. I could smell the smog and feel the grit throughout. And that's by someone called Craig Russell. So I'm actually delighted to have got that quote.
It's funny when you were reading it out, I thought that's very well written. That quote.
Oh, it's terrific! Yes, it's yeah. That's the second really good sentence in my book.
We're on a roll. Last year we interviewed the shortlist as well, but they had to announce the prize online. Is there going to be an event this year in person? Are you all going to the festival?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. I just got my fit to
Wild
fly
horses
certificate.
couldn't stop me.
Yeah. So it's all weekend. So it's Friday night that we've got the award ceremony. And if anyone does want to watch, if you go to the Bloody Scotland website, you can buy tickets to watch it online. It's completely free event, the awards ceremony, but you do need to register in advance. So there's our wee plug. I can give you the webpage if you want to put it on the website later.
Yeah, or you drop it in, just say it's approved by me.
Wow, you're terrifically well organised, Emma.
I was thinking the same thing, yeah.
What can I say? What can I say?
But it's handy having Emma as a member, actually, because she can just go and drop in the website link herself.
Indeed, I'll do that. I'll do that where we plug.
Yep, feel free. Say it's approved by me.
Mm-hmm.
Sam wants to know what the Scottish connection is in each of your books. I'm just keep going with you.
Well, with me, it was. I mean, it is probably my most Scottish book so far because it's about the Scottish identity and Stevenson's original tale of Jekyll and Hyde, though set in London, is very much, I think, about the Scottish personality. I think he was writing about the divided Scottish identity and Caledonian anti-syzygy and that kind of thing. So it's set in Edinburgh. So Edinburgh, has a divided personality, and it was exploring the old town, new town, medieval versus Georgian, North British versus Scottish thing. So it is definitely my most Scottish book. I have to say that I found it more difficult researching it than my other books, which have been set in various parts of the world. And I think it's just because the subject was, much closer to my sort of personal experience.
Emma?
Yeah, for me, it's funny because I started writing The Silent Daughter more than a decade ago, and I had the same central character and the same family, but the story was set in Guatemala because I was living there at the time, and that was how I got my agent, actually, with that version of the book. The only thing that was the same was the family name, basically, but it was actually my agent who said, I think the actual story here is great, but why don't we try setting it in Scotland? And I was a little bit resistant, to be honest, because I'd written another novel as well, which is still unpublished, which was set in Mexico, because I spent quite a few years out there. And my agent said, no, really, let's just go with a Scottish novel and see how you feel. And actually, the moment I started writing a book set in Edinburgh, I just loved it. I've lived abroad for most of my adult life, and it is great fun to write about the places that I've been, but actually I just found it really good fun getting back to Edinburgh and sort of just trying to capture some of the feel of the city, but also the feel of the language and the kind of characters that you meet in Scotland compared to the people you meet in Latin America. It's obviously entirely different. So yeah, I mean, it's based in Edinburgh, and my next one is based in Edinburgh as well, but and it's specifically Portobello, which is the seaside community in Edinburgh, which is where I have a wee flat. So I think it's a book that now strangely could only be set there, and I think I would think twice about setting a book outside of Scotland now, because I very much enjoy just trying to capture that Scottishness, I suppose, which has never left me.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question, Emma? Do you feel that your distance has given you a new objectivity when writing about Scotland, or do you think you would write the same kind of thing if you were in Scotland?
I don't know, and it's an interesting one, and I think actually Robert Louis Stevenson talked about this, didn't he? Because he was abroad for a lot of his life, and I remember reading a quote about that when I was at school actually, and thinking, it was not something like, a man is never so Scottish as when he's abroad, or something along those lines, but much more eloquently. I don't know. Do you know? It's hard to say, because I really I've spent so little of my adult life in Scotland. That I don't know. I mean, obviously, all the influences of living abroad have come into my writing in some ways, but I'm not entirely sure. Because I've never been writing while I'm in Scotland, so I really don't know how it would impact me if I was constantly surrounded by the bad weather and the clouds. I might not find it quite so romantic to write.
Yes,
about.
exactly. Yes, yeah. You see, I think that's why I found writing about Edinburgh, I find that quite difficult, and delving into its history, I found that quite difficult because it was, very, very close to me, if you know what I mean. Funnily enough, writing about Glasgow in the 1950s, I didn't have the same problem. I think it was the distance of time. But just about everything else I've written has been set in a different country, a different culture. But it's just, I find that interesting because I've come across that a lot, writers who write about their home country, but they don't, and live somewhere else, and they feel that they've gained that objectivity, that little bit of distance.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, I think, I think it's hard for me ever to see Scotland as anywhere other than my home. Although I also feel very at home in Scotland, but in Spain, sorry, and I think Spain I certainly see with this objectivity. I notice things that no Spanish people notice.
Yes, yes,
and I'm not sure if I have that. Maybe in some parts I have that in Scotland. I don't know, not to the same degree, certainly.
Yes, yeah. I think this is just my personal opinion. I think as a writer, if you become immersed in another culture, if you enjoy a different perspective even for a little while, I think it enriches your view when you're writing about wherever you're writing about, because you have that insider outsider thing. That's what I felt like when I was writing about Hamburg. Just the similarity and the strangeness of it, which, as you say, neither a complete foreigner nor a complete native would get. I think I find that interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm also very fascinated by the language aspect of it, because I'm bilingual, and I do have a different personality in Spanish, which is bizarre to me, but I do.
Yes.
And I find that whole I would love to explore that more deeply in a novel, actually, and because it's completely bizarre that we have more than one personality.
Yes. Yeah.
And I suppose that's what you've been writing about.
Yes. Well, yeah. It's true, but I have exactly the same thing when I speaking in German, when I'm doing this kind of thing in Germany and in German, I become different. I become more formal for a start, and I think that's just the language shapes your personality. And when you're thinking in another language, you do. It's my belief that you do behave differently. But the whole linguistic thing is fascinating. It's and I just I could bore for Scotland on the subject, but you spending time in Mexico, for example, I find that fascinating. People think, the people go on about American English being coming up with all of these new words and whatnot. And it hasn't. It's British English that changed over time, and I find the whole thing with Iberian Spanish and American Spanish. Find that fascinating, where Mexican Spanish is antiquated because it's fossilized when it's moved. And I think I'll stop here because this is where it gets really boring. But the whole thing played a big part in, my thinking with Hyde, for example, because Gaelic, Scottish, the Scottish Celtic language is actually a much older form than Irish is. Irish is a modern.
Okay.
So I just really love exploring these things and how the identity changes or stays the same as the culture and the language moves.
Absolutely. No, it's fascinating. We can talk
Yeah.
about it over a pint.
I know. I know. I get really boring.
No. I'm totally fascinated by it. I love these conversations. I just wondered if there's more questions from users.
Yes.
But...
Sorry.
There is, but I was enjoying the conversation as well. And they were the members. Someone's asked if you're living in Edinburgh or overseas still, Emma.
I usually do both. I have a wee flat in Portobello, which is just a gorgeous little part of Edinburgh that not so many people know about. It's where there's the beach and golden sands, and it's just gorgeous. So I have a wee flat there, which usually I spend a few months a year in, but obviously COVID kind of hindered my ability to move. So in fact, for the past year and a half, I've had it rented out. So I'm 100% in Barcelona. Although I come home when I can, and I move back to my mum and dad's house in Ayrshire, which is what I'm doing on Tuesday. In fact, I'm coming back. So I do try to come back normally every 2 months to see my family and just to top up my Scottishness so that it doesn't run out.
And someone said it's interesting to think about a book changing location. A location adds so many layers, it must change the feel of the story.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the Silent Daughter, I mean, I do still have the original version, which was written, I mean, way back in 2009, 2010. And it was completely different. I mean, Ruth Morrison, who's the central character in the book, it was there. And in some ways, her story was the same one, but everything else that happened in the book was completely different. And, there was drugs wars, there was smuggling, there was all this sort of corrupt police. There was, there was just so many more. It was. I was trying to capture Guatemala, and the light there's different, and the type of plants and everything. It was. I mean, I loved writing that book, but ultimately, I think when I rewrote it in the Scotland setting, I kind of thought, it won't change that much. I'll just change a few names. But in fact, the whole feel of the book changed dramatically. It became much darker. And I felt like I was able to sort of go much deeper with it in terms of the sort of character psychology and things. It was almost like, honestly, that the clouds kind of closed in a wee bit and gave me a bit more focus, as opposed to this wild sort of Latin American scene that I'd been trying to paint. So absolutely transformed it. And I do truly believe this is significantly better than the first attempts. And the fact that we're here today, I think, is testament to that.
Leslie is giggling at the idea of you topping up your Scottishness. Now we've got Robbie back. I'm going to ask you my next question, which is one that I've stolen off Sam because it's such a good one. What's the most recent scene that you've written without giving away spoilers? Oh, we've briefly had Robbie back. Great.
Robbie. He was there, he's...
Greg, tell us what the most recent scene is that you've written, and I'll try and get Robbie back.
You mean what I'm working on at the moment?
Yeah, what have you most recently written and what you're working on at the moment?
It's set in silent era Hollywood. It's something I'm working on at the moment, and it's due out next year. And I'm sure the other guys are the same. You get totally immersed if you're writing in a different location or a different period, you get totally immersed in that, and it's just it's fantastic. I can be even more boring about silent movies than I can about linguistics. But I just actually I love the whole thing, and it's set in 1927 Hollywood, and it is amazing the stuff that I've discovered working on it. The position of African American filmmakers and actors and women in Hollywood. It's absolutely amazing when you look back and you see that there were more people of color and more women involved in filmmaking in absolutely every department in every way than there is now. I mean, Hollywood is actually, despite what it would claim, it is much less diverse in its in the opportunities it offers. So I'm totally immersed in that, because film is second only to literature for me. You know, I love that. So.
Are all of your books standalones? Because you seem to have an amazing diversity of.
Well,
topics.
no, the coming one is a standalone, as a Hyde and the Devil aspect before, and the Devil aspect again. It was interesting what you were saying, because the Devil aspect started off as something that was set in the States, but I also had this idea of setting something in Central Europe in the lead up to the Second World War, and it was sort of two different ideas, and when they came together, they completely changed each other, and it was the Devil aspect. But before that, I wrote a science fiction novel under the name Christopher Galt, and I have written a series of novels set in Hamburg, Germany, and a series set in 1950s Glasgow. But the strange thing is the Fable series set in Hamburg became very, very successful in Germany, and they have made 5 movies out of it so far.
Wow.
Yeah, including one where I play Detective Number 5. And I tell you, it is without doubt the most significant 2.3 seconds of that movie.
How brilliant to be in your own movie. That's like a dream.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And what have you written most recently? Are you working on something else? Because Silent Daughter was your debut.
Yeah, I've actually literally just 3 days ago, I handed in the very final drafts for my second novel, which is called Find Her First. And so I've been completely immersed in that just endlessly. I mean, I struggle to believe that's not the real world, to be honest, because I've been so in it. And it's another one that's based. It's based in the same community as The Silent Daughter, so in the Portobello area of Edinburgh. And there's a couple of the same characters. So if you have read The Silent Daughter, and you may recognise a few faces and the sort of minor characters popping in and out. But in terms of where the last scene that I wrote was set in a pine forest, and I love pine forests. I love the smell of them. I love the light in them, and that was the last scene that I was working on for that book. And then yesterday, in fact, I went hiking through a pine forest, and I was sort of looking at the pines and going, have I captured that properly? Should I tweak some more? But I think it's had its final tweak. So I'll just have to leave that forest as it is, I think.
I'm curious if you do a Craig and appear as like a walk on in the movie of The Silent Daughter?
I would love to. I'd love to. I'll like work in the coffee shop or something like that.
It happens more than you think. I think authors appearing in there, but the movies are their books.
Yeah, well, I know Colin Dexter was always in the Morse stuff, but he tended just to be walking past, or because they gave him a line very early on, and after that they said, no, it's okay. We'll just have you walking past. But I mean, I was going to have a line, but I looked up meaningfully, and I think, it really sold the movie.
Yeah.
We've got a question that says, "Can you beat a stormtrooper for the best photo of your book somewhere?"
Can you?
I don't think. I'm trying to think. I don't think I can. Nothing's springing to mind at the moment.
Best place you've seen someone take a photo of your book, then? Let's bump you both.
I know. I mean, I remember the first time I saw someone take a picture of them reading at a pool on holiday, and that was, I mean, that is a sort of a moment for a debut author to tick off. You see someone with their feet up, and it was like a pink flamingo floating in the background, and then the Silent Daughter in the foreground. So I was very chuffed with that, I have to say.
Yeah. I can't remember what it was called. There was a BBC drama, and it was quite good. It was quite dark, and it was on late, and it had a sort of serial killer type theme. And I watched it. I thought, this is quite good. And at the end, it was supposed to be a significant scene where this guy, obviously inspired by this serial killer, is looking through the shelves of a bookshop, and he picked up Brother Grimm, one of my books from the shelves. So I went running upstairs, said to Wendy, "You've got to see this. You've got to see this." Of course, it was over by the time she got down, but that was one of the best ops I think I've seen. Yeah.
One of our other favourite things to ask, we love that question because you always get a really interesting answer. One of our other favourite questions to ask authors is, have you ever acted out a scene from one of your books?
I have to confess that I
did it with a knife.
Oh, really? No, I confess that I do have a recording of myself. So there's an important scene in a very sort of key location in my book. Is one of the stairways in Edinburgh that connects the Royal Mile down to the lower streets, and one of the main characters is running down it and ends up in a coma. So whether or not it's did she fall? Was she pushed? That's one of the central questions in the book, and if so, who did it? And I did, the last time I was in Edinburgh, I had a sneaky copy of The Silent Daughter in my bag. It just happened to be there, and I did run down those stairs, and then I sort of I put the book in various positions as if it was having a dramatic fall down the stairs, and ending up in a splatter at the bottom. So it's as close as I get to acting it out.
Yeah.
Have you acted it out, Craig?
No, not really. No, I don't think so. The closest, being of the age I am, growing up with spy movies, in Cold War themed movies and whatnot. I was in Halberstadt, which was it. This wasn't that long after the wall came down. I was doing a tour there, and there was this park bench, and it was like so many park benches you'd seen in spy movies. So I just went down and I sat there, waiting for someone to come and sit next to me and say, the weather in Minsk is unseasonably good, and hand me some secret documents. But no, it didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
I'm going to ask you another one of our favourite group questions now, which is what are your most memorable moments as an author?
Oh, this is a strange thing. It was when the Fable series went big in Germany, and they made the first movie. This is a very, very weird and very weirdly specific thing. There was a scene where they go to this bakery where this girl who's gone missing works, and there was a logo outside the bakery, and the logo was on the vans, created as if it was a real world bakery, which doesn't sound very very dramatic, but it was just that I was looking at something that I had invented, if you know what I mean. It was something I had made up, and there it was. They had recreated this scene that had just been in my head, and the name of this bakery and whatnot. And it was just, I think watching the first movie was a very, very special experience. And I have to say, I've had a lot of nice experiences visiting different markets, different countries. We talked about coming over to Barcelona and just engaging with people in other cultures who have read my work in other languages. I think that's always been a very special experience for me.
Good answer. Emma?
Yeah, I think, for me, my book was released just over a year ago, on the 3rd of September last year. And so, most of my book-related experiences are first-time experiences, So, the first time I did a signing was totally amazing. The first time, but to be honest, I think one of the most special moments was the first time anyone I know saw it in a shop, which was, it appeared in Tesco about 10 days before the official release date. So it was the 22nd of August last year, and I was on holiday in my camper van, and we were in this really remote beach in the north of Spain, with no signal, and we're just having a great time. And so they had the night there, and then the next morning, as we were driving out of this beach, my phone just started going crazy. And I just was getting all these messages, and one of my best friends had found my book in Tesco 10 days before it was due to be released. And it just triggered this hilarious sort of mad rush by all my friends and family to all the Tesco stores in Scotland. I mean, people were driving 100 miles, because it wasn't in all the Tesco's, it was only in some. So it was just people all over Scotland doing tours of all the Tesco's to get my book 10 days before release, and it was just hilarious. I think that moment, that first week, when I started getting photos of people holding my book in bookshops and supermarkets and stuff, I mean, that was just wow. Finally to see it out there was, I don't think a lot of things can top that as a sort of memorable moment. So
no. I remember it myself. And you have, when your first book comes out, you have a real sort of imposter syndrome feeling. You feel like this isn't real. And I have to say, it never goes away. It doesn't matter. No matter how many books you write, you think, oh, look, people are going to think I'm a real writer.
No.
Nah. Can I ask Emma a question? How did you find working on your second book? Because second book syndrome can be a problem for some authors.
Yeah, I have to say that it has been a struggle for me in a lot of ways, and I think part of that is the timing. You know, the first book, um, from start to finish, I probably took 2.5 to 3 years to rewrite The Silent Daughter, set in Scotland. But you know, there wasn't any pressure while I was writing it because I didn't have a contract at that point. And I did, you know, once I got offered the contract for the second book, I hadn't yet written it. I had just sold them the idea. And I think I've been writing for about 2 months and had 90,000 words. And I suddenly thought, that idea that I sold them, I actually don't like it.
Yes.
So it caused a little bit of a crisis, I would say. But luckily, with the help of my agent and an understanding editor, we managed to change the focus of my book without too much trouble. But no, I mean, in all seriousness, I have found it extremely challenging, the second one, and partly because of this time pressure. You know, having to do the first draft within a certain amount of time, and get it to the publisher, within sort of 8 or 9 months. I think it was 8 months, and that's a completely different concept. And also, I think, when I'm writing the first book, I don't have any other voices in my head apart from my own and the characters. And suddenly, with the second book, I've got my editor's voice, I've got readers' voices, I've got all this expectation,
Yes.
which I just didn't have before. And this sort of, because my first book is doing quite well, there's this feeling that I peaked too soon.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is a funny one, and it'd be interesting to know how you feel about that, having, you've obviously got some really successful books and a long career. I mean, you said it never goes away.
No, well, I think second book syndrome is exactly as you've described it. And it does, the second, sometimes the third book, it's like that, because and again, I'm expressing a personal opinion here, that you have this feeling, as you say, of expectation, that you're now meeting an expectation. And I think what happens as you move past that is you stop caring about meeting the expectation, because it is actually a negative thing. What made your book a success is your voice and the ideas that you wanted to communicate in it. And I think after you get past the second book, you settle back into, well, no, I'm going to write what I want to write, or what I would want to read. And you tend to distance those, as you say very well, those voices. I think you distance those voices until it's time to listen to them, if you know what I mean. When you're going through the editing process, and you're getting feedback. But I think the act of creation becomes freer after you've done the second book and maybe the third book. I think with me, I got second book syndrome with my third book, but that was because I went through exactly the same thing that you did. I had sold 3 books, and I started to write the second book, and there was just one night that I had been thinking about a different idea and these beams of light things. I thought, my God, this is it. And I got in touch with my publisher and said, I don't want to do the second book. I'll do it as the third book, but I want to do this first. So I was very enthused about that, very committed to that concept, which I hadn't sold in advance. So I found that easy to write. The third book, I was back to, I've sold an idea, I've sold an expectation, and I have to meet that. And I did find that very tough.
Yeah. So for my next one, I'm trying to be a little more careful before I we're sort of in conversations with my publisher, but I'm keen to be clearer on the idea and more confident that the idea is the right one. Although I think for me, I'm not a planner, and so I kind of just have characters floating around, and the ones that stay longest are the ones that I kind of choose to spend more time with. And I do find it very difficult to capture the idea of a book before I actually start writing. And I think I needed to write that 90,000 words, which I later put in the bin. Basically,
Yes.
I needed to write those in order to find what the actual story was about and what it wasn't about.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
which was unfortunate.
Yes.
But do you plan?
Yes, I plan and never follow it. I always find. I mean, I think what I do is the way I describe it in a rather rather pompous way is I'm making a journey and I know my destination, but I want the freedom to take detours as I get there, and that's I always know roughly what's going to happen, and I always know the themes that I want to explore. But what I've discovered, I think sometimes it's important to have a plan. Other times, it's, as you say, it's more important to let the theme breathe and for you to explore it and, prune it, get rid of the stuff that maybe sounded good originally, but isn't when you're writing it. I'm on my own now. Is that
I know
right?
we're not doing well.
I know. I was talking a lot, but please, guys, come back. Yes.
You have. I'm putting you back. There we go.
Yeah, that was odd. I could hear you, but I didn't realise I'd disappeared. I don't know if that was something I did. Sorry about that. No, it's interesting, the whole sort of planning versus. I mean, I think I always know the start point and the end point. I know because I think my end point is what I'm writing about usually, but it's just how to get there. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
That's the fun bit as well.
It is
fun, kinda. Fun when it goes well. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how my third one goes actually. And yeah, I'm just sort of mulling over quite a few ideas for that at the moment, and I'm deciding which one to go with. I think it's a good thing to have too many ideas rather than too few, I think so.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the toughest. The toughest thing is when you're writing and you have a main, you have your main storyline and you have other storylines, and sometimes one of the other storylines can become very rich. It becomes a very rich scene to mine, but you have to be so disciplined and say no. I've got to lose that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting process.
Yeah. You've been asked on the stream who you dedicated your current book. Well, I think the books that are in the shortlist too.
Yeah, I've dedicated mine to my mum and dad, and I there's lots of reasons for it. I get on really well with mum and dad. They've always supported me massively in all of my various decisions in life. So, I studied law and I decided to drop law, and then I became a news reporter and I decided to quit that and decided to move to Spain. Then I moved to Latin America, and they've always, they would probably have preferred if I'd just become a lawyer and stayed at home and been a sort of more regular and stable life. But they've always just been massively supportive of all of my decisions, and so it was a no-brainer for me, really. It was always going to dedicate that book to them, they didn't know. So they said they had a wee cry in the Tesco car park when they finally got their hands on it.
Yes, yeah. Oh, that's nice. Now, Hyde is dedicated to my wife, Wendy. I've dedicated a few of the books to her because we actually have worked as partners in the writing business for 30 years. So she is my first line editor, if you will, and has always given me the support and the encouragement that I need, because I don't know I don't know about you, Emma, but I am a sensitive flower, when it comes to my writing. You give Wendy something to read, and before she has a chance to tell me, "Oh, you hate it, it was terrible, it was awful." Oh. So she's been a huge support.
Yeah, I'm not that sensitive, actually. I don't know. I was a news reporter for a long time, and I had a notorious editor who I won't name in case it's anyone's cousin or something, but he would just absolutely destroy you if you made a mistake, of which I made many, and so I think I just got kind of used to people telling me that my work wasn't very good,
Yeah.
and I do think, looking back, I definitely improved through the criticisms he threw at me with great force, and yeah, I mean, I think I have 3 people that I send it to first off, when I write the book, and yeah, they're all very honest. They're all very honest, but I don't I've never been very upset. I don't think that I can remember. I've always seen sense in what they say.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think it's not that kind of sensitivity with me. I am open to editorial comment. For example, I operate a red flag system. If something comes up, if 2 people say there's a problem with something, even if I don't see the problem, then I will rework that. And when I worked as a freelance writer, again, as you were saying, it was a commercial skill. And this is a commercial skill as well. But I think what I'm getting at is, with writing fiction, I feel it's much more personal than I suppose I'm okay with criticism, but it's because I don't read it. If it's good, I'll read it. If it's bad, I won't.
What's the most interesting sort of research rabbit hole you've fallen down when researching things for your book? Or the most unusual one?
I mean, my books require some research, but I mean, a lot of it is from a newspaper reporter's point of view. My books, so my research was my former career. But I do remember at one point, for one of my unpublished books, which this may be why, I remember studying cockerels and cockerels' behaviour at one point. I think I was trying to do some horrendous elaborate metaphor for something, and it was actually very interesting to learn about cockerels mating dances and all that kind of stuff. But that's the most random thing I can think of. But it was never used and will never be used in any book, I would imagine.
But good if you ever go on Mass Finder
I think there have just been so many research rabbit holes that have gone down. The novel I wrote as Christopher Galt was the basis was quantum physics, and once you start to dig into that counterintuitive yet scientific world, you get lost. You really do get lost. But I get very, very heavily, go very deep with research into the stuff I write, and I do get lost because, as I've said, I've got this interest in in language, culture, and identity. So if I have someone who is been writing about someone who was born in southern Louisiana, and that's weeks of being completely lost in a completely different culture, and you get lost and you come out of it and you're richer, because not just in terms of being a writer, but just as a person, because you've delved into someone else's experience of the world. God, that sounded very worthy, but you know what I mean.
All I'm doing is looking up chickens on YouTube.
No, but I get that, because when I worked as a freelance writer, I remember I wrote this thing about fish farming, and at parties, I would talk to people about the life cycle of salmon, and you could see the will to live draining from them. But I think that's essential as a writer. You've got to be able to become enthusiastic and fascinated about every aspect of what you're writing about.
Yeah.
And it's great fun.
Absolutely.
We've got about 4 minutes left. Robbie has passed on his apologies. He's having a major internet problem.
Oh,
That's a shame. That's a shame.
I know, we've invited him back to join us on one of the other interviews we're doing with
excellent.
Yes.
Hopefully we can get him back in. But in the few minutes left, just remind us again about your books and who you are, so we can finish off.
Okay, I'll just remind everyone, in case you can't see the sign behind me, my debut novel is, I don't know if it's on the screen or not, The Silent Daughter. It's my debut. It's nominated for the debut prize at Bloody Scotland and also the Mcilvanney prize, and it follows a news reporter called Christie Morrison as he scours Edinburgh looking for his missing daughter, and has lots of elements about social media and the digital world as well. So the judges described it as domestic noir, or taking domestic noir and offering something fresh and new and different. So that's what you're going to get if you read mine.
And mine is Hyde, which in some ways is an origin story of the character who inspired Stevenson to write Jekyll and Hyde, but who is also a detective in Victorian Edinburgh, and who suffers from a form of epilepsy where he loses time and can't account for his actions. And it's set against a world of Celtic mythology and dark secret societies, and a very divided personality of a city in Edinburgh. It's a roller coaster.
Sounds brilliant. Sounds brilliant.
It does sound brilliant. How much research did you have to do into epilepsy for it?
Oh, God, right. You said we've got 4 minutes. When I was younger, when I was a kid, I used to have something called Alice in Wonderland syndrome. It's related to migraine, and it's related to epilepsy, and I've always been fascinated in that area because of that, and also because of what it does to your sense of reality. I mean, Lewis Carroll suffered from it enormously, which is where all these images came from in Alice in Wonderland. So I have always had an interest in, and just a general interest in neuropsychiatry and misidentification disorders and that kind of thing. It's as short an answer as it can give, I think.
It's a really good answer. And then all that's left to say is thank you so much, you two, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for having us. Thank you. And we hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, it's a shame we couldn't for an hour. I could listen to you for ages.
Yeah. Well,
Come
thanks.
and join us. Come and join us at Bloody Scotland next week if you're able.
Yes, yes. Well, thanks. It was lovely to be invited. I'm just sorry that that Robbie had to bail out because of internet problems, because his book is fantastic, and we'd like to know where he's going with the character of Draghorn. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you, and I'll see you next week at the festival.
Indeed, yes.
Excellent.
Okay. Bye now.